Hey guys, Metal Jesus here, and I am back with a new video I'm very excited to share with you. It is literally years in the making. It is a Sierra reunion. This all happened because of something called the Adventure Game Fanfare, which is a brand new convention that is dedicated to classic adventure games. And what made this so special is that they invited a bunch of key figures from the old Sierra Online days, myself included, for a full-blown reunion. It's hard to believe, but it's been several decades since all of these ex-Sierra employees have been in the same room. It was pretty special, and that includes Ken Roberta Williams, Lowe, Jensen, Robert Holmes, Lorelei Shannon, Lori and Corey Cole, Ken Allen, and just a ton more. So in this video, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the event, and I'm also going to share some highlights from two of those panels where fans basically got to ask their burning question of these legendary developers. This was a pretty interesting convention because basically they took over a wing of the Tacoma Convention Center, and basically you see it here. There is this long hallway where kind of you would mingle and where a lot of the action is, but then they also had several side rooms for panels and some other stuff I'm going to show you. And this is definitely a smaller convention than I typically go to because they didn't really want it to be a big expo with, thousands of people and vendors, but instead, because it's their first year, they really designed this to be a little bit more intimate. The goal here was that they wanted to give fans of these games direct access all weekend long to some of their favorite developers and artists and the people who made these games that they love. That said, there were a couple vendors here, including Al's Music and Games. They showed up. Now, they are a popular retro gaming store all throughout the Seattle area, and it was really nice to see them here because if you've been to their stores, they got a ton of stuff. They got video games, they got music, they got collectibles and stuff like that. And so they had a very small table here for people who wanted it. Several artists were here that worked on classic adventure games like King's Quest and Space Quest, and they were selling their art. And then most of those people also did signings if you were interested in that. So, a lot of people were lining up to have their favorite artists who worked on their favorite games, do a signing right there. Also, several people asked Paul and I to sign stuff, which was really great. We're always really happy to do this anytime somebody asks. There was also a little bit of Sierra cosplay. You see this guy showing up as Leisure Suit Larry. I thought he looked fantastic. And then they had several tables set up that were kind of a celebration of 80s and 90s big box PC games. As you might expect, there was a big emphasis on Sierra adventure games because obviously they made a ton of them and were very popular, but there was also other stuff here, other games that I had forgotten about, some boxed games here that I don't even have in my collection that were really cool to see. So yeah, that was kind of neat to walk around and take a look at those. There was a room that was dedicated to being a classic PC museum. So in here, they had a lot of different systems set up and working, and you were able to just walk up, grab a mouse and a keyboard and mess around with them if you wish. And I have to say, there was a pretty incredible collection of vintage and classic computers in here, all of them in really great shape. I love it when these expos and these conventions do this. Check out this original copy of Mystery House. This is the very first Sierra game that they ever made, and it's running on a period correct computer. And again, like the others, you could walk up, sit down, play this game as though you are back in 1980. That was really awesome. What I thought was pretty cool about this convention is that it's not just a look at the past, but it's also a celebration of newer and upcoming adventure games. This was something I did not expect to see here, and it was pretty cool, actually. So they had an entire room dedicated to showing you many of these new adventure games. And so, we think of adventure games as a genre that, is from the 80s and 90s. And yes, that was kind of the peak of that genre. But man, there are a bunch of people who are still passionate about this, this genre, and are creating brand new games for new gamers today. These run on modern systems, modern consoles, and a lot of these developers here, had these set up, and you could talk to them about it. You could sit down and play them, give them feedback. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I saw this original promo cardboard standee of Windows 95. I thought this was just amazing.
I would love to get a collection of these. Let's get a Windows 98, Windows XP one like this. I would put this in my gaming room. It's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Not in your bedroom, though. You would never sleep at night if you knew that was working over.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
And pretty much all weekend long, people would line up and meet with some of their favorite developers, like Ken and Roberta. You see a bunch of people hanging out here with Ken, asking him all sorts of questions, I'm sure, about running Sierra and pumping out all those awesome classic games. And it was cool. They would hang out here. You could get stuff signed. You could also have a picture taken. Again, very fan-focused. And then I mentioned that we had panels, and they were panels all weekend long. They asked Paul and I to host two of them, two of the Sierra-specific ones. And so I'm going to show you some highlights from both of those. The first one being a panel specifically with Ken and Roberta Williams, because they knew a lot of people would have a lot of things specific for them. And then there was a second panel that Paul hosted, which had a bunch of other people from Sierra. We're talking programmers, artists, sound people, composers. It was pretty cool. So I'm going to show you highlights from both of those. Thank you so much for coming out here. This is a very special weekend. As you guys heard, it is an official kind of Sierra reunion party. It is years in the making. We've been trying to get something together, for a while now. And so we're very happy. We want to thank the organizers for making this a reality. This is very, very cool. I'm going to really just start it off with a question of my own, and then we're going to have a microphone that's going to go around the audience. You guys can ask yours. I'm just kind of curious, you guys are back in the game making video games for the first time in decades. Round of applause. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Yes. And I would love to know is, comparing it from the 80s and 90s to now. I mean, what are your thoughts about this? I'm sure lots of lessons, right?
I'll let you go first.
Oh.
Yeah.
I liked the industry better when it was just us and like 2 or 3 competitors.
Yeah. And by the way, because you were the largest publisher of video games at the time, right? So
yeah. We were, I don't know, half of all the games sold or something, but it's a different world now. There's more games released in a day than there were in the whole industry when we were publishing. So it's a new world.
Yeah.
But, but good product still breaks through.
What about you, Roberta, with creativity, right?
Yeah, well, for me, when we first started back in the early 80s, I don't want to say we were the only game in town, so to speak, but the competition was a lot less. And because we got in early, we were able to sort of get ahead and, beat the competition to, some extents and grow the company. And then we get out, and Ken and I go off onto oceans and traveling around the world in our own boat. Come back 25 years later, and we hadn't really looked at the game industry or really played games or really. I mean, we were like totally out of it. We were mostly into thinking about boats and cruising. So we come back, we decide we're going to do this, and thinking we can just come in, just. Here we are, and we were surprised that's not true, and that we've had to work hard again, just like it almost was, well, not as harder than it was at the beginning, and to kind of make ourselves known again, and what we're trying to do with Colossal Cave. That was a unique idea, whether people agree it was a good idea or a bad idea, that's what we decided to do, and then how to do it, and then having to explain that and everything, and then just discovering the competition has been just mind-boggling for us to do. But it's been fun too, though. Yeah. We really enjoyed the experience.
So we'd like to open it up to you guys. Do you have any burning questions you'd like to ask Ken and Roberta? So Microphone's wandering there.
Hi. Two things. One, my best friend Katie and I started playing your games in kindergarten back in the very early 80s. We continue to play those games to this day. It means so much to us. So I just wanted to say thank you. You guys were a huge part of our
I
childhood.
appreciate that very much.
My question is this. I'm really curious to hear what you guys are thinking about when you look at the games that are available today compared to the games that were around back when you started, all the way up to, the mid-90s, late 90s when Sierra kind of ended. I'm curious to hear what your opinion is of what's around now compared to what was around then.
Well, okay, I'll go first. As a game designer, one of the things that I discovered, and this goes way back, to the beginning almost. I started out as a gamer, and that's what got me into the business. What I learned is that as you work on games and you do your own games, you actually fall out of playing games because you do them. And I've discovered that designing the games is more fun than actually playing the games, and that's true. For me, it's more fun to just design them. But so I've never really paid a lot of attention to other games for even back then, and then having been away from it for so long and then coming back, we didn't look at games at all for the last 25 years. So we're now just back, and I'm starting to, and when you say games, do you mean adventure games or any kind of games?
Just any kind of game.
Any kind of games.
Where we're at.
Yeah, my
He's
focus,
wondering if you play a lot of Call of Duty online. That's what you're really, you're like all hardcore, swearing.
She was the one
guns.
kicking my ass on that level. I knew it.
It could have been me. You
That
never
was more
know.
Ken.
You never
Yeah,
know.
that was Ken. Yeah.
No, I'm always going to go to adventure games. I mean, that's what I do, and I love them. So I have checked them out, a few out, but I can't say that I've spent days and days, or maybe not even hours and hours, but looked at them just because I've been curious about the development of adventure games since then, way back. And just really curious about the art and the gameplay and the interfaces and all that. And I have to say I've been a little unimpressed. I hate to say that.
We're all friends here. You can say.
But I was sort of hoping to see a little bit more innovation, but I do know that that the adventure game genre did kind of go not away, certainly not, but
It's kind of morphed a little
it
bit.
was very popular. I think in the 80s and the early 90s, adventure games arguably could have been one of the top genres. And so I was used to that, and we were very used to innovating. That was kind of the thing for us, and so I was a little disappointed but I know that later on the adventure game genre sort of went down in interest, and action games and shooters and multiplayer, and every other kind have come into fore. So, but I feel though right now that I feel like we might be where people are getting tired of those, where you always have to be talking with other people that come in and socializing and action, and you got to get that guy, you got to shoot him, you got to do this, you got to do that, and jump over this thing. And maybe people are ready for more quieter, personal, integrate yourself into a story and just enjoy it for what it is. I'm hoping that we're going to go into a new era that way.
I was going to add to that. You guys jumped in pretty early on VR. I remember when we went down and hung out with you guys had a bunch of VR headsets, which I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
That you saw that as an opportunity and an interest for sure.
Yeah, my strategy was always to try to figure out where the competitors aren't and get there. Because, I can compete, but it's better not to compete. Just have the market all to yourself. So VR's new, so we wanted to get in early and try to do some cool stuff there. And we just did some mixed reality stuff, which is kind of fun. And we did some unique stuff with the interface, not necessarily good or bad, but different. You know, that was one thing I was always shooting for, was to surprise people. And one of the big things that was important to me, you know, whereas a lot of people look at the industry and say, where is the industry at? And that's what we want to do. I was always kind of like, where's the industry at? And that's where I want to get away from and do something new that people haven't seen before. So Sierra was unique in that I wouldn't hire people that had worked for a competitor. And we were located in the boondocks, and I kind of liked that because our people were our people. We did things our way, and even between projects, I really didn't want them, you know, studying each other, because I wanted to surprise people with games and show them something they hadn't seen before in some category or some platform they hadn't done. And I think part of why Sierra broke through was because, you know, especially in those days, it's hard to imagine now, but everybody kind of looked to us to figure out where the industry was going. And hardware was evolving so fast at that time. I mean, in those days, you know, today's computer was nothing like, you know, last year's computer. You really kind of had to be ahead of the game to stay current and relevant. Whereas, you know, today a 3-year-old computer and a 1-year-old computer, there's not much difference. But in those days, it was a big, big difference with new things you could do. So.
And that's why you had 80 people in your tech support department getting these things running.
Yeah.
Along those,
people. We had great people.
Yeah,
You're right, you did.
We did.
Well,
Hi. First of all, thank you both so much for all you did. You gave me a lot of great childhood memories, and even now, still as an adult, lots of fun playing the game. So I really appreciate it. This question's more on the professional business side. I'm a high school computer science teacher, and I've never worked in industry. I'm a career teacher, and my question is, I have a lot of students that are very passionate about coding, and a number of them that are interested in going into the field, but having never worked in the field, I don't know what specific advice to give them. So just through you to me, to my students, what is some advice that I could give to a 16, 17, 18-year-old who is interested in making a career out of computers?
well, pick a different career.
No,
Through all of my history, there hasn't been enough engineers to go around. But right now, it's kind of brutal out there in the engineering world for those that have missed it. Game companies are laying off. Business companies are laying off. So hopefully, I mean, there's always, I think of the world in terms of a pendulum swinging. And there's times when there's not enough engineers and times when there's too many, or business is good, and then it goes bad. And right now, it's kind of, boy, if I had a son or daughter who was going to college to graduate, you know, next year as a software engineer, I'd be sweating, you know. So I don't know. I mean, what would you tell people? Obviously, it's becoming a much more technology-driven world, and AI is changing things faster than anybody. You know, when I'm writing code now, I have ChatGPT in the other window, and it seems like
He told me the other day, he said, you know, I wanted to try to do this one routine, and how would you do it? You know, GTP
the ChatGPT
and GPT, and it wrote the routine. It came right back with the routine.
Yeah, you can actually
Just like
give it
that.
code.
Yeah.
You can give it, you know, blocks of 50 lines of code and say, there's something screwed up here. What should I do? And it spits it back. I mean, what a weird world we're living in.
We're this
that's
close to
pretty
Skynet.
alien.
This close.
What I would say is, you know, learn it, and it's not going to hurt anybody to learn how to code, and they should. And try to teach them the latest and the greatest, whatever it is, and try to look forward and see what's coming down the pike, and try to have them look there and teach them there. You know, focus on that. But I would, to kind of follow what Ken was saying, I would say, and then learn something else too, just in case. Yeah.
Well, following on that a little bit, something that I've seen, you know, over the years working in the industry and other industries is, if you're passionate about something and you have the opportunity and you want to do it, first of all, follow that.
Yeah.
And second, if you want to get into the industry, if at all possible, make an example, build a project. Artists have portfolios, filmmakers, have reels, musicians
That's true.
have demos. Would you
That's
agree that that's a good way to get in? And with today's tools, it's way easier to knock something out than coding a DOS. Would you agree that'd be a good
and
path?
excellence also is important, though. They should build a portfolio. That's very true of programming or art or animation or music or sound effects. If you want to be like a sound engineer or whatever, you should build a portfolio. Do it as when you're young, build it up, and become an expert in it. That's what you need in today's world.
No, there's a lot of wannabe game developers. I mean, there's a whole Reddit forum where you can go and find other people that, if you're an engineer, team up with an artist, team up with a musician and build something. Because that, more than anything, especially with big companies, they'll focus on whether or not you have the right degree. But in
Probably.
kind of my world, if somebody sends you a game and it blows you away, that's it. They're hired.
Yeah.
So,
The other thing I would add to this is that in the Seattle area, we have Nintendo of North America here, and they have that school of video game over on the east side.
Right.
It's Kirkland or Redmond?
Redmond.
It's Redmond. Is it DigiPen?
DigiPen?
Oh, DigiPen.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
DigiPen.
And so,
Okay.
Nintendo pulls people out of there.
I didn't know Nintendo owns DigiPen.
They started it, I believe.
Oh, wow.
They did. Yes.
Yeah. So, and it's very close to their campus, as well as Xbox and all those other, Valve is over there. So, especially in this area, you can schmooze and potentially meet people or learn off other people or go to school for it, specifically for video games.
I was curious about the using puzzles to elevate story and how you guys' flow was when creating games from the ground up. What the flow was, okay, we have an object in Act 3, but we need a puzzle piece from Act 1. How much back and forth was there when it came to integrating puzzles into the storyline? What the general flow was it organic, or did you run into problems like, well, we need something here. Do we have to go back to the start and implement an item that we need for the final act? And I'm just curious what that workflow would look like.
That's probably one of the hardest things to integrate with these games. Is the puzzles, because it is a game. So you have to make it a game. So what does that mean exactly? Early on for me, and my guess is it's probably true for many other game designers, developers, is that first you're not exactly sure, how to put those puzzles in without them seeming kind of dumb, why is that there, or why would you pick up this object here? You're carrying it around with you, and and almost at the end of the game, oh, finally you can use it, it's like, or use it in this weird way, or it's that's hard. And as you get better, as you do it, you kind of get better. So I've just been doing some study on King's Quest, because I'm going to be talking about King's Quest later, and he knows that I've lost a lot of memory on that, and I didn't want to be
on a boat.
I've been on a boat, and I didn't want to be asked a question about, I don't know, is Rosella going through Colima, and I don't know. Colima? What game was that in? I forget. And then so I've been researching, and I know now that Rosella was not ever in Colima. So, but I know that now because I've been studying it.
So they can't trick you.
Yeah, can't trick me on that one,
Yeah.
but I'm sure you could trick me. But my point is, I've been doing some research, so I'm not completely flat-footed on that subject. And I see that, I was going over walkthroughs and people's opinions on it, and I see where I made a lot of mistakes early on in designing King's Quest. And I'm sure the games even earlier than that of silliness. One example, there's a desert. I don't remember now. I just looked it up, but I can't remember now which one.
Somebody here will know.
You're wondering. Yeah, somebody will know.
Yeah, store your memory in their head.
Yeah, please. You're going to have to help me in the next. That you're wandering in a desert, and you keep wandering, and you page off and page on, and you're through the desert, and I think there's like a skeleton that you meet, and then something else, and what bad
Is it 5?
It's King's Quest.
5. 5.
Told ya.
And what bad designing that was, and everything. And I go, yeah, it is. Why did I do that? That was dumb. I would never do that now again, of course, if I were to design a new game. But putting puzzles in and trying to integrate them, part of it's a learning experience, because I don't know that you can even learn that. Maybe there's classes there in some college or university that tells you how to do that, but it's not easy.
I
You do the
always
best you can.
imagined your office would have like a huge board with all these puzzle elements and like red string going between all of them, like some
You kind of
mad
do,
detective.
you kind of do. I mean, one of the things I do is, I would make lists. So I'd have lists of puzzles that, and they could be anything from mazes to passwords to codes or, whatever, or using a kind of a weird object to do another thing. And I have lists along with characters, good and bad, and storylines and regions and lands, and, and I'd have lists. So as I was building it up, I would look at, okay, well, I can, should I add a maze? Should I add this? And just sort of would build it up. Yeah.
Interesting.
Hi, Roberta and Ken. It's so great to meet you. I'm a little bit new to the fandom of Sierra, so please excuse this question. I have a two-parter. What do you think about series that are movies that are based on video games like The Last of Us and Fallout? And would you ever consider taking any of your games and having those made into series or movies?
Good
I'll let you
question.
answer.
Say it again.
The series is,
Yeah.
The Last of Me, or
So the question,
The Last of Us.
the question is,
I did watch that series, by the way. The
Yep.
Last of Us.
so the question is,
Yeah.
with the movie adaptations, series adaptations of games, would Ken or Roberta ever consider having one of their games made into a series?
I would love it if somebody
Yeah,
would.
somebody would.
Phantasmagoria.
It's not up to us.
Yes,
Well,
somebody'd have to come to us and ask to do it, and we'd look at them and see if they were, kind of a good group. They could do it and do it justice.
Which game would you choose? If you could pick one and
Well,
say, I want to make a movie out of this.
Phantasmagoria.
Yeah, that is the correct answer,
For
by the
me-
way.
But Laura Bow, I think, would be
Yeah.
really cool too.
Oh, Laura Bow is great.
Yeah.
too.
Laura Bow,
Yeah,
yeah.
Laura Bow.
Anybody from Amazon Prime or Netflix here? We can negotiate
So,
this.
You'll
but
be
we
the,
wouldn't
the
do
agent.
it ourselves.
Yeah.
We would not do that. Somebody else would have to come to us.
Okay, fine, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Write me a check.
I also asked because I am a filmmaker and working with
Oh,
Oh,
there you go.
well, there you go.
So do we need to meet after this meeting? We'll have to talk. All right.
Although we don't own any of the rights to any of the Sierra properties anymore.
That is true.
Yeah.
We
Ah,
sold the company,
yes.
so we don't own King's Quest. We don't
That is
own
true.
any of that. And there were great series.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is so
Microsoft
true. How did
owns
I
it,
not
right?
remember that? God,
Yeah.
it just
'Cause,
Yeah.
I think
If
Micro-
I'm not sure if the Activision
You'd
deal
have
has
to go
gone
to
through, but if they
Microsoft.
do, then it would.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's done because
Yeah.
Call of Duty is going to come out on Game Pass.
Yeah.
So
I've been so involved in this discussion, I completely forgot that we don't own those anymore.
A lot of these
We're gonna take
series
it back.
I'm not even sure Microsoft knows they own.
that's probably
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they were buried inside of Activision. And
You know what I'm thinking? Road trip.
Road trip. We can
Road
fix
trip.
that.
We just show
Yeah.
up. Everybody on Monday, let's go.
Yeah,
This
right.
group right here.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody, to the Sierra Days panel. Happy to see you all here. Welcome to the Adventure Game Expo. We're super excited to be here with a bunch of the folks that made Sierra what it was, both back in the day and hopefully into the future.
Hey, I have kind of hopefully not an offensive question here. Did any of you write any puzzles that were specifically for the Sierra Helpline?
For the helpline.
I'm pretty sure Al had some.
You know, when I started, there was no book on how to write a game. There was no classes. There was no university courses. I mean, the only way I learned to write a puzzle was by playing other games. And I didn't intend to screw up. But it happened. I mean, we all made mistakes, but I think we got better as we went along.
I don't think it was ever discouraged.
puzzles were never discouraged that were so difficult that somebody would have to call because that was a revenue source.
Yeah.
And business is business, guys.
I do remember talking Ken into writing hint books, though.
Yes.
Because I'm a terrible at puzzle solving, and so I was playing the Zork or some other game with a hint book, and I said, why don't we have hint books? We could. And Ken said, no, we don't want to do that. That's not. I said, well, if I could write them, and he said, well, if you write them, I'll print them up, and you can have half the money. I got to work. I wrote a lot of hit books, and then the contract changed.
Okay, it was kind of, this is a bit of a dick move. But when I was working on, I started out as a writer on the magazine, Interaction. And we frequently had late nights there, just like everybody did at Sierra. And there was a glitch in the Sierra helpline where after the regular helpline hours, sometimes it would ring through into the writer's room. And we would answer it. And we always only gave 2 answers, no matter what anybody asked. One of them was, give the M&Ms to the bear. And the other one was, get the axe that's in the cave. Really awful.
So I have a question for Jane. I think a lot of Sierra fans pretty much consider the original Gabriel Knight to be, I think, one of the best Sierra adventure games ever made. It's a fantastic game. Holds up today. And I remember being kind of blown away at the time that you guys made a CD version of it that had a bunch of Hollywood talent. You had Michael Dorn from Star Trek. You had the great Mark Hamill, and you had Tim Curry, among others. I'm dying to know, one, how did you get that past Ken and his budget? Right? I mean, but more specifically, yeah, how did that happen? How did you guys get that Hollywood talent to come and make a video game at a time when it wasn't really the thing to do, right?
Well, I think we lucked out in that we were one of the first, so Hollywood was kind of interested in getting their foot in the door and thinking that was going to be a huge revenue source in the future. And we had been hooked up with a voiceover actor from Hollywood named Stu Rosen, and I'm not even sure how that happened. I don't remember. But he did voiceover for animated cartoons and for years and years. So he knew everybody in the industry who did voiceover. So he's like, well, I can get Tim, I can get Leia, I can get, all these people. And they were all willing to work for basically SAG minimum just because it was like one of the very first voiceover games. So, I mean, really, it's down to Stu. He had the contacts and he made that happen. So when we knew what we were going to do, when we had these names, it definitely was a little bit over our budget. So we went to Mark, who was the studio head, and then he took it to Ken, and we were like, look, we can get Tim Curry, we can get these people, but it's just going to cost this a little bit more. And of course it was approved, so it was great.
Mine wasn't.
Yeah, I was going to say the late 1980s, early 1990s, just in terms of so-called multimedia, that was a huge sea change in technology and media in general.
Yeah.
And Hollywood was, I remember them being like pretty quick to want in on that to a certain degree. Like I remember my first exposure to Sierra was a cousin of mine got a 486 computer for his birthday or something, and King's Quest 6 came with it, and I was blown away. Oh my God, the characters are talking. That's amazing, So it was kind of inevitable when you think about it.
I think there was some regret because Tim Curry, I was there for the first few weeks they were doing that. They didn't realize how big those scripts were. I mean, they're used to doing a little animated feature that's a half an hour long or something. No, here's your script, and a lot of screaming and
Say this 200 ways.
Yeah.
So I have a sad tale to tell if you want to hear it. I'll pass my time though. One of the big projects that Sierra was working on up in Washington was the Babylon 5 game, which ultimately did never ship. And the really sad story is that a whole lot of talkers and stuff were done with all the original actors. And Christy Marks, who also did wonderful game design, also had the connection with JMS and stuff, and was helping with that kind of stuff. And she ended up with the original videotapes. And I had encouraged her for years, because we're still close friends, to get those digitized because they're just sitting on a tape. And 4 years ago, they all burned up in the campfire in Paradise. Sad tale.
I got introduced to Sierra games through Leisure Suit Larry, so this goes to all. Basically, two questions. The first one is kind of a personal. Can you single out a few Larry games which you have the most fun making, and why? And the second one, I'm sorry, I have to ask. I'm sure you've been asked this a lot of times before, but what happened to Larry 4?
Well, the question is, what game do you have the most fun making? And the second one was, what happened to Larry 4?
I had the most fun making Larry 4. It was the least work. What happened was I had never heard of anything more than a trilogy. You know, when I finished Larry 3, I just assumed that was going to be the end of the character in the series and stuff, because there were no sequels that ended in numbers larger than 3 that I knew of. And so I tied everything up and put a bow on it and got Larry a job working for Ken and took him on a tour of Sierra's offices and stuff. And, it was just, this is it. I'm done with this. I'll do something else. And then the game sold. And the sales guys, all people said, well, you're going to do another one, aren't you? And I was like, oh, I don't think so. So Ken said, well, why don't you do an interactive multiplayer online adventure game? This was in 1989, I think, or 90.
Yeah, that's a dead end. Those will never sell.
You can have 3 months.
I said, well, all right, if that's what you think we should work on. So he put Jeff Stevenson and Matthew George and I in a room with a bunch of coffee, and for months we ended up getting almost nothing done. We got online interactive done, but it certainly wasn't an adventure game, and it took another 10 years before Ultima Online kind of succeeded in that field, kind of. So anyway, after 6 months of doing that, remember, I wasn't on salary. I didn't get paid until the game shipped, and I didn't see any way that this damn thing was going to ship anytime soon, and I was hungry. I didn't develop this body easily. So I said, I think I need to do something else. They said, well, why don't you do Larry 4? I said, okay. So I went home and I thought, I don't know what to do. I can't figure, how do I get out of this? I've painted myself into a corner. I've got him all, happily married and a good job and everything. And I went up to visit somebody in accounting at the office and ran into her, and she said, hey, Al, what are you doing? What are you working on now, Larry 4? And like a smart ass, I said, no, Larry 5.
That's awesome.
And I saw a way out of my dilemma. So it turned out to be a wonderful marketing strategy, because whenever they took the product into people to sell it, they would say, well, this is the new Larry 5's coming out. What? Well, I don't think I've played 4 yet. So we got them hooked. Anyway, so that
I'll tell you where Larry 4 went. Space Quest 4. Right? It was the big virus that infected the master computer.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's true. Yeah.
And speaking of that,
the most fun, I would say, was probably Larry 7, because this kind of ties into the question earlier. I mean, I never knew what I was doing. I was never a writer. I had no training. I was a saxophone player. What the hell did I know? So I always felt like I'm going to keep doing this until they figure out I don't know what I'm doing. And so by the time I got to Larry 7, I'd done it for 15 years, and I thought, hey, I know how to write a game now. And so Larry 7 came quite easily, and I was proud of the stuff that we put in it. And and we had a wonderful team. Everybody was experienced, and we all knew and so, of course, as soon as it was done, everything went to hell. But that's
Al, I was telling my daughter about the cease and desist you got from Norton Utilities.
All right.
Well, there is one other thing I'd like to
The
add to
operating rule
that
on Larry
answer.
7
And
is, you don't cut funny. Remember that?
Yeah.
one of the things that Sierra did really well, Al was an example of that, was humor. Even to this day, games have a hard time conveying humor. Mark Crow was in here earlier. He was one of the halves of the guys from Andromeda. Space Quest today is still the benchmark of humor in games.
Yeah.
And we had a chance to work on that. That was very
agree.
fun. Yeah.
That was some highlights from the 2 panels that Paul and I were part of, and each one of those was about an hour long. And if you want to see the entirety of those panels, plus all of the others that they had going on that weekend, I'll put a link down in the video description below. And so that, guys, is the big Sierra reunion down in Tacoma, Washington at the Adventure Game Fan Fair. I had no idea what to expect going down to this. I mean, I knew it was their first year and it was going to be small and kind of intimate, but I was blown away by the people and the passion all weekend long. So many people were just excited to be there. It was a great energy. I'm not sure when they're going to do another one or what their future plans are, but I'll put a link to their website down in the description below. I could definitely see something like this rolled into another expo, like, the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. It'd be interesting if they took that and just rolled it into something bigger. I think that would work out pretty well. But if they decide to do another standalone one, that works too, right? So anyways, guys, love to know what you think down in the comments below. And as always, I want to thank you for watching my channel. Thank you for subscribing, and take care.